The biggest leak of government secrets ever began in December of 2012 with a single email delivered to an IP address in Rio de Janeiro.
Glenn Greenwald, one of the world's busiest journalists, is sitting in his home in Rio, and he sees an email from someone he doesn't know. It's not a friend, it's not his mum, and it just says, "I've got some stuff you might be interested in."
He didn't use his name, and he said very cryptically and very vaguely that he had information that he wanted to discuss with me, but could only do so if I were to install encryption.
Guardian newspaper columnist and blogger Glenn Greenwald didn't pay much attention to the email.
99% of the time it ends up that they're crazy or delusional, or the story is just not very good.
And this guy or girl, we don't know who it is persistent. So a few days later, emails again and says, "Look, Glenn, can you do this thing?" And Glenn still doesn't do it. This attempt basically to leak all of these secrets initially just goes straight into the sand.
The source moved on, this time to Berlin. He was soon exchanging emails with American documentary filmmaker Laura Poitras.
She'd been in contact for over a month with a mysterious source who had reached out to her using her encryption key and using anonymous channels, and said he had a big story for her.
A few weeks later in New York, Poitras met national security investigative reporter Barton Gellman at a Greenwich Village restaurant.
This was something she wanted to be exceptionally careful about. We agreed on a cafe to meet at, and we also, I think, both understood that when we got there, we'd move to someplace else.
Poitras asked Gellman to vet the source and meet him electronically.
Her source, who became also my source, needed to take very special precautions in the usual NSA style, and so he called me Brass Banner, and he called himself Virax, which means truth teller in Latin.
Through sophisticated encrypted messages, Virax promised an unprecedented scoop, but it came with a warning.
He believed he was risking his freedom and possibly his life, and he warned me as well that if the U.S. intelligence community believed that by getting rid of me, they could prevent this story from happening, he said that my life would be at risk.
In late May, Virax surprised Gellman and Poitras. He sent them an invitation.
He said, "Your destination is Hong Kong."
Poitras wanted to go. Barton Gellman, worried about a secret meeting in a foreign country like China, decided not to. But Poitras knew someone who might join her. That spring, Glenn Greenwald arrived in New York to deliver a speech.
And we met that night in my hotel in the lobby, and she showed me these emails that she had been exchanging with this person who was claiming that he was a national security state insider with access to very sensitive information that he believed to be very incriminating, and stated very definitively that he wanted to turn it over to her and to me.
Greenwald decided to join Poitras.
We all knew that this was incredibly risky and uncertain, but the story had to be reported.
In June, Poitras and Greenwald headed to the airport.
I think they're kind of quite excited, but there's also a sort of feeling that maybe this is just the most terrific hoax.
They were joined by Ewan McCaskill, a veteran Guardian reporter.
At the time, I didn't think it was for real, didn't take it that seriously, and thought it was a slightly obscure story.
Once they were finally airborne, Poitras thought it was safe to share with Greenwald something the source had securely sent to her.
That's kind of quite a moment there in a secure space, and so Laura creeps forward to go and see Glenn.
Laura whips out this thumb drive and in a very sort of almost mischievous way says, you know, guess what this is, and told me that she had just received a fairly large archive of documents.
They kind of can't control their excitement because this is clearly the biggest story that anyone's worked on since the Pentagon Papers in the 1970s.